Welcome to Protea Conversations. My name is Zane Stevens. I'm the founder of Protea Financial, and today I'm with Kath. Welcome, Kath.
Hi, nice to be back.
Yeah, so Kath, give us a quick update on who you are, where you're based.
I'm a senior manager in the South African office for the past year and a half now.
Great. How long have you been with Protea in total?
It just went 7 years on the 1st of October, so quite a good stint now. And before that, I was in audit, but as for many of us, that didn't work out, so I decided to move over to the accounting side.
Yeah, great. So Kath has been with us on Protea Conversations before. We'll put a link down to her first interview with me, so that you guys can all link it to it and have a look what that is. But yep, Kath was in an audit firm. I happened to sort of find out that she was looking for a position by uh, an ex-manager of mine who also happens to be living in the same house as Kath. So, that's always helpful. It's a pretty good reference when somebody says, "Hey, I've
Yeah.
got this person. I seem to like them quite a bit. I'm sure you will too." And
Yeah,
I just happened to be in the country at that time, and we're able
yeah,
to jump straight into an interview and make some quick decisions, which, if anybody knows in the accounting space, the competition for talent is always tough. So if you get a
yeah,
little bit of dumb luck where you happen to be in the right place at the right time and you can move quickly, it's always beneficial. Any sort
yeah.
of like memories or thoughts of that time 7 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to get out at that point as well. So I think I always tell people when they ask them, like sometimes life sends you where you shouldn't be, so that it takes you to the place that you should really go. Because Quinton had obviously mentioned Protea before, but I was adamant on staying in auditing. So I think it had life had to show me that it wasn't for me, so that I could come to Protea, and then I mean, 7 years later, still enjoying it. So, definitely a good decision for both of us, I think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, worked out really well for me, that you've been able to sort of progress through the levels, showed your worth, showed your desire to want to take on the extra responsibility, which is more important than actual ability a lot of the time.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously you need the ability, but if you don't have the desire to take on what it means to be a manager, what it means to be a leader, there's no point in doing it because it can
yeah,
become a very lonely place very, very quickly.
no, for sure.
So, I mean, like you mentioned, you've been in that senior manager role about 18 months. Um, we sort of went through a transition. We had Sonia, who was great. She filled that role, but she needed a new challenge. I needed some help on the US side, so we promoted her through into those ranks. Then sort of went through a bit of a transition space. Eventually, you took up the role as senior manager, and I feel it's been a pretty successful 18 months. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I think it was definitely been a good 18 months. And, I think we've made some good changes. I think the biggest challenge that's come was that we grew so quickly last year. So I think like going into the role, I kind of had an idea of like what needed to be done, but then we grew so quickly, and all of a sudden you have to like realize that you have no idea what you need to do, and like you have to change your perspective really quickly because you're going from managing, say, 15 people in the firm to doubling that basically. So I think it was a big challenge being that I was new to the role and that we grew so quickly. But I think I'm always open to change and I enjoy the challenge. So I think it has been a good 18 months. And I think between you and I, we've also had good discussions on what needs to change because we grew. We didn't just decide to stay and stick with what we were doing before. And I think that's what made the year and a half even more successful.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I always forget how crazy last year was. 2022
Yeah,
was just absolutely nuts. We'd hire
crazy.
somebody and, we'd be like, great, we're good. And then before they even start, you're like, oh shit, they're full of capacity and we need
Yeah,
another person. Please keep going.
yeah,
And it just never ended. And, the truth behind it is we can really see now because a lot of the team members are like, oh, it's really quiet. But when we look
yeah,
at productivity numbers and chargeability numbers, the percentage of time, we're basically the same spot we were last year. It
Yeah.
just, it's just a perception because there were just so many new projects, so many new
Yeah.
faces that
No,
it was
absolutely.
tough. But I guess there, on that, there is two very big different challenges there, right? When there's a lot of change and a lot of new faces coming in versus now where it's a lot more stable, things are perceived as quieter.
Yeah.
We do know our clients are challenged with a tough economic environment, cash flow is tight.
Yeah.
So generally they are sort of, okay, I'll do that rather than, pay for you guys to do it. So there is a
Mm,
little bit less once-off projects. But,
yeah.
craziness is hard to manage because there's lots of change and quietness is hard to manage as well. For me, I think sometimes the quieter times are even
Yeah.
harder to manage than constant change. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's in the quieter times that we have to look at the business and see what do we need to reassess and what do we need to change and do better. It's so easy to fall into that trap that is quiet, that we just sit back and say, okay, we did a really good job last year and we managed it, so we're done now. We've made the changes we need to make. But I think during the quiet times, we need to look at what else do we need to do. And like you say, people get into that routine, and a lot of the time that routine equates to boredom or not feeling like they have enough work. So we have to look at ways to manage those situations as well.
It's also interesting because we were dealing with different change this year from last year. Last year was
Yeah,
people change and just process change and client change. With this year, one of the big changes we realized is also it's the first proper year out of COVID. And there's a lot
yeah,
more, people's lives have changed a lot.
yeah,
Everything, the way things are being done are changed a lot. And things, all of a sudden, life has gotten a lot busier around them. How do you
yeah.
sort of manage that on a day-to-day basis and sort of keeping people focused, keeping people engaged when there is so much more to do than there was in the 2 years prior.
Yeah, I think it's been a tough transition, especially now with work picking up again. And I think even like you look at the school setup and the staff with kids, like the schools just went like crazy this year with all the activities getting it back in. So it's almost like there's double the amount of school activities you're doing. So your personal life is busy, your now work's all of a sudden picking up after the quiet time. So I think the main thing we do when we encourage our staff is to just get back into that routine. Sometimes when you're not that busy, you can just take each day as it comes because there's enough time for ad hoc stuff to come in. But I think as it gets busy, the biggest thing we recommend is just to get a schedule set up, some sort of routine going again, just to get back into it. And once you've come through that routine, life seems a lot less crazy, even though you are probably spending the same amount of time you were before.
Yeah, I mean, I have two young kids myself. You're obviously dealing with a 12th grader, a kid in matric, so there's a lot of
Yeah,
craziness that goes along with that as well. But it does take up a lot more time, and it just takes a little bit more planning, not just from a personal side,
yeah,
but making sure I fit in my work schedule as well.
yeah.
What conversations would you have to other accountants out there when it comes to planning your day? Especially, I mean, I know not just the kid, you coach hockey as well and you play as well and you're running around with that. So you've got a lot going on and you do an exceptional job of making sure that you have time for your personal life as well as your work life. How do you do that and how would you explain that to others so they could be successful as well?
Yeah, so I think my main thing is I like to block out a lot of hours for when I actually work. So usually I'll coach in the afternoons, or if I have to run and fetch Julie in the afternoons. So I'll try and block up maybe 6 hours where I just sit and work and take short breaks in between, as opposed to having long breaks. My break I kind of see as going to coach hockey. That's what I'm doing for my enjoyment. So I'll probably block out quite a few hours in the morning. And then when I come back, I like to block out hours again and get my work done. So I don't like to work late at night. And I'm definitely not an early morning person. So waking up early is not going to work for me. But yeah, I just tend to try and make sure that I have dedicated hours that I work. Um, Obviously, Quentin, he's very hands-on with Julie, so that helps a lot. I mean, and he does all the cooking. I'm not sure that's for my schedule or for our health and safety, but he'll do that. So I think we like share our responsibilities at home too, which also helps a lot. But yeah, I tend to have similar days every day, even though the hours look the same, even if you're doing different things. Like I like to work the similar hours every day. And that just gives you enough leeway that if something unexpected comes up, you can still fit it in and you can still run around and do those ad hoc tasks that you need, whether it's work or personal, just because you have a steady schedule. And the nice thing about Protea is if your schedule has to be moved that day because ad hoc stuff comes up or there's an emergency in your personal life, you just communicate with your team and can go handle that. No problems, no questions asked.
Yeah, I mean, that's where flexibility comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of getting your work done, but also being able to do it when you can do it, especially in those cases where it's really, really tricky. I
Yeah.
love the topic about, having a good schedule.
Yeah.
I talk about that a lot, and mine is pretty inflexible, but I also have times in the year where I'm coaching sport and it takes up a lot more of my afternoon. How did
Yeah.
you go about developing your schedule? How did you figure out what works best for you?
I think when I started way back when, it's difficult. Like it's such a change. And you also have to have like dedication to make sure that you're doing your work. It's so easy to just come and go and think, oh, I'll just catch up later. So you actually have to, sit yourself down and figure it out. There is a bit of trial and error, but I think, you know, like I learned pretty quickly I'm not going to wake up early. So if that's my plan for the next day, it's not going to work out and I'm already going to be on the back foot. So I'm very lucky also with coaching hockey that they give me set times. So it doesn't really fluctuate too much. I know when I have to come and go for hockey. So I think it is just figuring out what works for you. I mean, we know some of our staff members, they wake up at 5 a.m. You wake up really early. That's what works for you, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for me. So I think it is figuring out what works for you, knowing yourself. You have to be self-aware. You can't say you're going to work like me at 5 a.m. If I promise myself that, it's not going to happen. So I think being self-aware, and then at the beginning, you have to be quite strict with yourself, that you have to like say, okay, at this time, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go to the study, I'm going to work, I'm going to leave for hockey at this time. Once you've got into that routine, then you can start, playing around with more things. And also once you know more about the work you're on, the clients you're on, you can kind of anticipate when maybe is not the best time. Like I always tell Quentin, like I'll only fetch Julie in the first 4 days of the month if I have to. Like he's on duty there. The rest of the month, I can go anytime. But the first 4 days, that's when I need more time. So it's just figuring out when you need the time, when you need to work, when you have more time to do the other stuff you need to do in your life.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Like any habit, I think, you need some discipline, and then you can
Yeah.
sort of once it's built in, you can sort of adjust from there. I mean, one of the things that I did sort of pick out when you're talking just about your family life, and you sort of mentioned again with, talking to Quentin about the first 4 days of the month, you know, a lot of what you spoke about there was teamwork and communication, which,
Yeah.
surprise, surprise, is what Protea runs on, right? So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
weird how those two small topics, like I need to communicate with people and we need to work as a team to get things done, make sense
Yeah.
in personal life as well as in work life, and fairly
For sure.
simple concepts to be successful. And it seems like you're embracing them in all aspects of your life.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'm lucky that Quentin, he most of the time is effective communicator. So yeah, you definitely, and I think also you have to set your boundaries as well. Like career is important to me, and Quentin knows that just as much as his career is important to him. So like it's not likely that he will just ask me, say, then in the first 4 business days to go fetch Julie. I'll try and make a plan if he can't do it. So, but he also knows that he can rely on me, that I will then also jump in if I need to. So it's just give and take and figuring it out.
Yeah, that's great advice. So we spoke about the increase in team size. We're up to 31 people down in South Africa, 39 in total on both continents. It's obviously a very different world trying to manage all these different personalities. I mean, I would also say the scope in ages has increased a lot
Yeah.
in the last couple of years. We've got younger on the one side and a little bit older on the other side, because people get older. That's just what happens. So I would say the gap between our youngest and our oldest is probably the largest it's ever been. So you're
Yeah.
talking multiple generations of people. In terms of that as well, we've probably diversified in terms of backgrounds and race more than ever in the last year,
Yeah.
which is great, but obviously does create additional challenges. So how are you sort of feeling about having to manage this wide variety of people that we end up sort of having, this eclectic mix that we've put together?
Yeah, I think I've taken a lot of my self-learning to also learn how to manage people. I mean, there's a lot to be said about managing the younger generations coming to the workforce as well. And I've actually watched a video by Simon Sinek, and he was speaking about like the older generations, they used to have like their community at home and their social at home, and they used to go to church and they used to know their neighbors, and they would join sports clubs and gyms. And he's saying the younger generation, they're starting to, really see work as everything. Like a lot of corporations, they'll have gyms in their buildings. You got your friends or your work colleagues. You're looking for work for your social events. You're looking at your job for your community, giving back to your neighborhood. So work has really become, the center of people's being. So it's like when we ask that question, are you energized at work? No one separates that from their outside, their personal lives, because work is their personal life. It's their friends, it's their social. So I think the one thing we have to do is we have to look at that and know that, not all events are going to please everyone, because people are getting different things from what we're giving them. So it has been a challenge, but I think the one thing that also gets me by is that we have a good team of managers, and it's a lot easier to manage different ages and different people when you have a good team that can manage their own teams. So that's also been one of the strengths that we've had. But in general, we are still a professional entity, and it comes down to respect. I think we have a lot of opportunities to learn about each other and to just do some education on different cultures and even different generations. So I think, but it all comes down to just respecting one another and making sure that when you go into the office or when you see or any interaction you have, that you approach that with respect, and I think you'll come out on the other side.
Yep. Go ahead and be kind, right? That's what I always say.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's talk about that team. We have been able to assemble a pretty great management team.
Yeah,
All of us, working towards the same spot of just, you know, getting people in a good place so people are happy. And, we've obviously realized happy people are much more productive people, and the team constantly
yeah,
works towards that. There obviously are challenges, but I think one of the things that I'm pretty proud of with the team that we have built, we've been able to develop them all internally. Like we've never hired somebody to come in as a manager to this
yeah,
point in time. We've been able to bring people in. I mean, like you started as an accountant and you worked your way through the
yeah,
ranks, and the whole management team is basically like that. Some came in at senior accountant level and
yeah,
developed through, and then others have been around for a long time. Ali's been with us, what, 8 years?
yeah,
Cindy's 5 years. Michelle's about to hit 5 years. I think Danielle's hitting 5 years in like a couple of weeks.
yeah,
But people have been around for a long time and been able to work their way into the management role. And, you know, that's always been important to us. I think
yeah,
that is really, really important because to be a good manager, you have to understand culture. And that's, part of it is sort of growing up in it a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
So
for
what
sure.
you've done since you've walked into this management role is that you did see this gap in that we do need to develop the next leaders.
Yeah,
And part of that was the introduction of what you've called senior accountant training, which I thought
yeah,
was you know fantastic. It's all things that we always spoke about, but you brought it together in a
yeah,
course where the group as senior accountants can get together and discuss it and get a little bit more personal about what each of these topics means. Uh, it's
Yeah,
clearly been successful. You know, we had one person make massive strides from where they were to being like, great, you're ready to be promoted to junior manager, and Cindy. And
yeah.
we obviously saw improvement from other people that went through it. So tell me a little bit about the idea, how you came up with it, and what the implementation looked like.
Yeah, it was really funny actually because I spoke to Janet, our HR staff member, and she was like, "Oh, Zane mentioned that he wants to do more for the senior accountants." And I was like, "Oh, great," because I just developed this training, so I guess we had the same idea. But yeah, I think we never really like formalized the plan, but we've always been in that situation where we train people for the job that they're gonna have in the future. I mean, when I was a junior manager, I think I went on senior manager training already. So I think that was always like our thought process, always train people for the job you want them to have in the future. And that's basically what I took the training from, like management. What are you going to experience when you become a manager and how are you going to deal with that? And I think, we have really great training sessions that we go on. They give us like really great basics and training. But as you mentioned, Protea is like very different, the way we run things and even just our culture and what we put into the firm. So a lot of the topics like came to mind from general basic management topics, but then just tailor making it for what we do at Protea. Some of the topics I start and I'd like give it a Google, and I was like, no, I'm throwing this out the window because I think Google's good if you generic and you want the basics, but if you want a personalized training, like you need to take your own experiences and put it into that. And that's basically what I did. And I made it quite practical. Like we did role plays and more that the people attending the training did the talking. They didn't really like my role plays. They always would laugh. So we're not developing a bunch of actors, but I think they got really good practical examples out of it then. And I think a few things we spoke about what you mentioned earlier, like dealing with people from different generations. And it's something, is there, but you don't think about what you have to do when you actually have to manage that and manage teams like that. So we had practical examples about that. And, just also the emotions you go through as a leader. And like you mentioned earlier, sometimes it can be a really lonely road. So just, developing and dealing with people's emotions as well as your own and making sure that you can manage other people even when you're not having a good day. We discuss topics like that, very practical examples. So I think, yeah, like you said, it was good.
But I definitely think it's been a success. And the role plays, as much as it is uncomfortable, if you're a manager, it's going to be uncomfortable. You have to be a little bit
Yeah,
vulnerable to be successful. So it's
yeah,
it's it's really good practice to get people ready. And I'm excited for the next round up in
yeah,
2024. There'll obviously be some people going through it the second time around, but there's no harm in keep refining your skills.
yeah,
So I'm very excited. I think it's been a great success. Definitely seeing the
yeah,
improvements, getting people more in that mindset of what it means to manage. Because it's
yeah,
easy to be a senior on a project, to be a manager is totally different story.
yeah, for sure.
Last topic I'd like to talk about today, and you sort of touched on this as you sort of discussed, people wanting a little bit more from their work environment, right? People aren't just thinking of work and life; they're thinking of work and life.
Yeah.
And you brought in the great initiative this year called Theme Thursdays. Tell us a little bit about what are Theme Thursdays.
Yeah, so every month I basically went through, the months and took out a lot of our values or some of the themes for the month. And then also I just added a few, fun themes that I thought would help the team. We had like Eco Month in April when it's Eco Day, and Heritage Days in September. So we had Culture and Heritage Day, just playing with some of the things that happen within the year. But yeah, so basically it's just the last Thursday of the month, we will take the theme for that month and we'll have a little event, which is non-compulsory. but it's
For
giving
now.
people for now, yes. But it's giving people that opportunity to interact. And I think we mentioned like we have such a diverse group now, and sometimes Quinton does have some wisdom. So we were talking about just how firms grow, and you need to change to keep up with the growth. And he actually mentioned like when firms grow, you should try have only your compulsory event should be like our thank you lunch and our family day. Because if you have like activities, you're never going to please everyone. No one likes everything. Like if you're going to do something more outdoorsy and sporty, I'm going to like that. But when we have to do something artistic, I'm a bit out of my depth. But so you need a variety of different activities so that people can almost still interact, but also then decide like what activities will suit them. And I think also the one thing is like sometimes they're quite surprised by the activities they didn't think they would like, or the themes that they didn't think they'll enjoy are actually the ones they enjoy the most. So yeah, but it's maybe a bit more of a social aspect, but also we have some serious topics. This month, for instance, we are doing communication. So every Monday, I just put in some good communication reminders, or we watch a video. I'm still planning the theme Thursday for this month, but we'll have some good activities on communication. So some of the topics are, our pillars and our values and good reminders. And then there are some topics which like Culture and Diversity Month. Everyone loved that. And it was such a good way to learn about each other. But it is a bit more of a fun month that we have, not as serious as, say, communication, which is part of our everyday work.
Yeah, I think it's been a great success. Whenever I speak to any of the team members, and I try to talk to everybody twice a year. I just ask them how things are going, how they're liking social, and the feedback on Theme Thursdays have been great.
Yeah.
Everybody who's attended has always enjoyed them. They think they're very well thought out. So it's definitely been a good success to bring people together. And when I say not compulsory in future, we just want people to at least attend some every year, in the year, not all
Yeah.
of them. So give people a little bit of choice, but also want to get people interacting with other people. And that's the
Yeah.
most important part of these Theme Thursdays, because it allows you to see a different side of individuals,
Yeah.
each time around. And that's important. It can sometimes so be easy just to see them as a name on a screen that you're responding to an
Yeah.
email and not see them as a person. So getting to be able to interact with them on a, like you said, a much more social, relaxed point of view is great. And you
Yeah.
can do, like you're doing right now, it's serious every week, and then Thursday comes and it's a little bit
Yeah.
of fun and get together and enjoy time together. And that I think is
Yeah.
always that's always important.
No, for sure. Definitely helps with teamwork and teams on clients because, like you said, if you know someone on a more personal level and you understand, if I don't have a young kid, but if I know and interact with someone who does, like start to understand their challenges and maybe when I need to be more of a team member or step in because they're having challenges that I don't have at the moment. So it definitely aids teamwork and even communication on the projects.
That's a great point. Kath, it's been so good to hear from you again. You're doing a fantastic job 18 months in. I'm extremely thankful for everything you do. I know the team is very appreciative of everything you do. I know it hasn't been the easiest time. You definitely jumped in at one of the most interesting points in
Yeah.
our history as we approach 10 years. Very thankful for it. I appreciate all the hard work. Thank you for sharing with us, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thanks. That was cool.